Images and stories about apocalypse are ubiquitous in popular culture. The zombie apocalypse, for example, is shown in many movies, TV shows, and even video games.
Night of the Living Dead.
Similarly, there are many stories about humans facing the end of the world due to environmental and natural disasters. Some of these are the result of human activity, such as the catastrophic impacts of climate change, pollution, and resource scarcity. Meanwhile, other media depict an end caused by external natural causes, like asteroids or meteors on a collision course with Earth.
It's what we call a global killer, the end of mankind.
Half the world will be incinerated by the heat blast, and the rest will freeze to death in nuclear winter.
Basically the worst parts of the Bible.
In other cases, the demise of humanity is depicted as a product of our own activities, such as humans' technological and scientific hubris. These stories remind us of humans' dangerous overconfidence in our ability to control life. The Matrix describes a future in which intelligent machines came to control the humans who created them, using their biological material as an energy source while trapping their minds in a virtual reality.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
The Matrix is just one of many stories that imagine the destruction of human life at the hands of man-made robots and artificial intelligence. For example, in Battlestar Galactica, robots, or Cylons as they're called, attack Earth, killing billions and leaving less than 50,000 humans struggling to survive on starships.
In an instant, everything we knew was gone.
There are less than 50,000 of us left.
This war is over. We lost.
Now we're on the run. Our enemy, our own creation, is a bigger threat than we'd ever imagined.
Similarly, Blade Runner depicts genetically engineered replicants intent on destroying the humans who created them. And of course, Planet of the Apes provides an image of how humans' genetic experimentation on animals could lead to the death and enslavement of humans at the hands of apes.
God damn you all to hell!
Add to this a whole host of other images of the end of the world or the death of humanity, like nuclear war, viruses and contagions.
If that bug gets out of there, 260 million Americans will be dead or dying.
And extraterrestrials or aliens. Needless to say, humans have an interest and fascination with the end of the world.
My name is Robert Neville. I'm a survivor living in New York City. I haven't seen another person in 3 years.
In fact, for many of us, we've grown up watching these stories as children.
For all, it's his business if he wants to blow up the Earth. Whoa! You can't do that. All the people I know are on the Earth. The nerve of this character.
Cartoons about the end of the world.
Bart, you cast the wrong spell! Zombies! Please, Lise, they prefer to be called the living impaired.
About diabolical villains. And of course, about all of the superheroes who constantly save humanity, save the planet, and prevent the apocalypse.
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
The use of the apocalypse and its prevention is unsurprisingly a common theme in superhero and other action films. For these heroes, saving the world is kind of their purpose.
They want an apocalypse. Well, we'll give them one.
In the X-Men series, we even have a villain who is literally called Apocalypse.
Some call him Apocalypse. He was some kind of god. He always had 4 followers.
like the Four Horsemen.
Together, we will cleanse the earth.
Everything they've built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
Of course, apocalyptic stories don't only involve superheroes.
What the?
Greg!
It's too late for you! You're already in the hole!
Damn it! Get off me, see?
Ordinary people like us, are also drawn into the drama.
I'm never gonna see my family again.
And whether the story focuses on an average person or a hero,
you should actually limber up as well.
Across these films, important ethical questions are embedded into the stories. For example, what kind of sacrifices will our heroes make to save others?
Gentlemen,
what are you prepared to do?
Who will live and who will die, and who has the right to decide?
To ensure the continuation of our way of life, we've been preparing a network of immense caves, and we can put 1 million people in them, underground, for 2 years. On August 10th, we're going to hold a national lottery. A computer will randomly select 800,000 Americans to join the 200,000 scientists, teachers, soldiers, and artists who have already been chosen.
Will people work together for a collective good, or will they merely serve their individual needs?
In the end,
It will be every man for himself.
In the face of extinction, will people unite not just to protect their families within their own homes,
I need you to help him. You're asking me to leave my family.
but to work with other countries and societies across the entire globe? The film Independence Day, for example, offers one of the more optimistic visions of a world united. While the story focuses on characters from the United States, the global threat of human extinction from alien attackers prompts countries from around the world to fight together to save the entire species. With undercurrents of U.S. patriotism and nationalism, the film's idealism is summed up best by the president's rousing speech to American fighters as they prepare for battle.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
The sequel, Independence Day Resurgence, follows up on these themes by depicting a world that is, on the whole, peacefully united.
Our survival is only possible when we stand together.
But it is also a world that is heavily militarized. Thus, the Independence Day franchise, like other films, might prompt us to ask ourselves some questions, such as, in the face of threats to human survival, what kind of societies will we build? Will we become more united? Or will despotic, fascist, or authoritarian regimes take over? It is at this point that the line between apocalypse and dystopia start to blur together. By now you may be wondering, when is something actually apocalyptic? Where are the lines drawn between apocalypse, post-apocalypse, and dystopia? So let's take a minute to break down the terms. In popular use, apocalypse is generally synonymous with catastrophe, disaster, and destruction, basically an end-of-times scenario. But the term apocalypse itself means more than just disaster. In fact, it is actually derived from the Greek word apocalyptine, meaning to uncover or reveal. In other words, the end of this world could uncover or reveal a new one. This use of apocalypse is also evident in biblical scripture, where apocalypse is said to lead to eternal utopia for those deemed righteous. Even in the apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic films and TV shows we've seen in this video, apocalypse is not necessarily or strictly the end for humanity. Indeed, we see people who are still alive after the contagions, the zombie apocalypses, or environmental destruction. Apocalyptic disasters can lead humans to new forms of life, including the potential for creating new types of worlds that may be more peaceful, more equitable, or more utopic. However, in imagining a utopian or ideal society, we might wonder who decides what a utopia looks like. Indeed, within literature and film, there are many examples of societies that appear to be perfect places on the surface, but reveal themselves to be deeply violent as the story progresses.
We are in the last city on Earth. Some call it the perfect society, but others know better.
Utopia is a term for paradise, while dystopia is used to describe the opposite, a hell on earth or a society of violence and control. Thus, dystopian stories often provide a vision of human society gone wrong, and in this sense, a dystopia may also be a form of apocalypse, as human life or certain values are destroyed. Some dystopias may be anarchic in character, as individuals or small groups do their best to survive in a cutthroat world. Others may be more authoritarian, as strict governments step in to offer order in chaotic times. Whatever the motif, it is important to examine these close relationships between apocalypse, post-apocalypse, utopia, and dystopia. As we wrap up the video, let's take the final few minutes to look at some recurring themes in apocalyptic stories and consider the underlying questions they prompt. First, we see the importance of children and young people front and center in many dystopic and apocalyptic stories. In Children of Men, humans have become infertile. Without children, there is no hope for the future, and society is collapsing. In The Handmaid's Tale, the rise of an authoritarian and fundamentalist society is linked to increasing infertility, and the few fertile women, like the lead character Offred, are forced to act as reproductive surrogates called handmaids. Likewise, many stories focus on young people themselves as victims of adult manipulation and violence in dystopian societies. In The Giver and the Divergent series, young people are forced down strict paths.
Today you will take a test. You ready?
This was supposed to tell me what to do. We're supposed to trust the test.
Didn't work on you. They call it divergent.
While adults at first seem benevolent, their violence and cruelty, and the society's cruelty, is revealed as soon as the youth try to diverge from their assigned role. In the Maze Runner films and the TV show The 100, adults have destroyed the planet. In both stories, young people are used as test subjects for human survival, watching if kids live or die in destroyed or radioactive landscapes. And of course, in Hunger Games, young people are sent to kill one another and to die in order to instill fear and maintain an authoritarian society. Across these stories, young people represent the future of humanity. They are controlled and brutalized, but they are also the ones to rebel, resist, and overthrow violent systems. In a sense, they represent humanity's hope for a better world. Second, In many post-apocalyptic stories, we see plants, animals, and environmental forces of Earth retaking a planet that had previously been heavily controlled by humans. The scales tip, and human vulnerability to environment becomes clear. Polar ice caps melt, and humans struggle to survive on top of oceans. Apes displace humanity in Planet of the Apes. In urban landscapes now devoid of human life, there is wildlife, plants, and water. As Ian Malcolm said in Jurassic Park,
one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but, well, there it is.
Third, throughout this video, I have often referred to humanity as one overarching category. Of course, this category is misleading. There is a great deal of diversity in human life, society, and experience that make it difficult to make broad claims about humanity on the whole. Many apocalyptic and dystopian narratives invite us to consider how race, gender, class, and other forms of difference operate, both in our present societies and in the future. For example, throughout many of the stories, we can see how human experiences before and after the apocalypse are deeply impacted by power and privilege. Therefore, we might ask, how do these stories address gender? How do they address class? How do they address race? Or more pointedly, are people of color even present in these visions of the future? Pay attention to whose humanity is valued in the stories that we tell about apocalypse. There are many more themes that could be addressed in this discussion of apocalypse, which I don't have time to cover. The potential for love or community in the ruins, the use of apocalyptic metaphors in sci-fi or fantasy stories that aren't even set in our universe or world.
Winter is coming.
Or the global interest in apocalyptic stories beyond just the confines of US stories shown in this video. However, I'll leave you with just one final idea to chew on. The apocalypse is spatial. There is a geography to how and where the apocalypse happens. Geographical relationships between people, places, and environments are implicated in causing or bringing about the apocalypse. Then, through the apocalypse, geographical relationships are remade. Environmental landscapes and man-made landscapes change dramatically. Economic systems are undone. People migrate. Relationships between cultures are altered, as are political systems. New identities are built and new ways of life in new places. These are all apocalyptic geographies.